The year is 1495, and Florence is a city burning with the fever of the Renaissance. Beyond these thick ancient walls, the air is thick with the frantic energy of a world in transition. Merchants haggling over velvet prices, the desperate clatter of carts on stone, and the constant demanding tolling of the Duomo bells. But step inside this studio, and the world does not just quiet down, it ceases to exist entirely. Here, the only thing that matters is the friction of stone against stone and the slow, deliberate alchemy of turning earth into light. You are not just a spectator. You are a witness to the secret, silent labor that brings divine visions to life. My name is an apprentice in the workshop of a master, and my afternoon is dedicated to the most sacred task of all, the grinding of pigments. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn tight, sealing out the relentless heat of the Tuscan sun, keeping this room in a state of cool, perpetual twilight. There is no urgency in these high-ceilinged rafters. There is only the scent of raw linseed oil, the sharp, clean bite of turpentine, and the hypnotic, repetitive cycle of my work. I reach for a piece of lapis lazuli, a stone so rare and costly. It is said to be worth more than gold, brought over vast oceans and treacherous mountain passes to reach these hands. It sits heavy, cold, and jagged upon the thick white marble slab. I place the glass molar against it, feeling the resistance of the mineral. I begin the slow, circular motion, a steady, low grr that resonates through the table, vibrates against my palms, and settles deep into the floorboards. It is a sound that demands patience, a sound that strips away the noise of the outside world until there is nothing left but the rhythm of the work. Each circle I trace is a meditation, a slow eroding of the raw, jagged chunk into a fine, luminous dust. Time in this room does not march forward. It pulls in the corners like the shadows. It takes hours to grind a single handful of pigment, and in those hours I am entirely free. My breath slows. My heart rate sinks with the steady grind of the glass against the marble. The world outside may be full of chaos, power, and political ambition, but in here there is only the transformative power of touch and stone. This is not mere manual labor, it is a ritual. It is the bridge between the physical world and the ethereal heights of an altarpiece that will one day hold the gaze of thousands. I am not just preparing paint, I am preparing a vessel for beauty. The dust begins to gather, a brilliant deep blue against the stark white of the slab. I feel the fine grit, the transition from solidity to something fluid, something ready to be breathed into by the oil. There is a profound sense of peace in this repetitive, focused productivity. I lose myself in the process, and as the afternoon light shifts imperceptibly behind the velvet curtains, I realize that this rhythm is the heartbeat of history. It is the sound that built the cathedrals, the sound that painted the faces of angels, and the sound that for the next few hours will be the only language we speak. The ochre is waiting next, a warm, earthy contrast to the cold, distant blue of the lapis. My muscles are warm, my focus is sharp, and the studio is a fortress of calm. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in the exhaustion that begins to settle in my shoulders. Every grain is a sacrifice to the work, a small piece of myself poured into the color. As the blue becomes finer, smoother, and more intense under the muller, I feel the weight of the city fade completely. There is no hunger for fame, no anxiety about the future, only the perfect, tactile reality of this moment. I continue, a steady, unyielding force, pushing against the stone, surrendering to the cycle of the grind. Each rotation is a step closer to perfection, a step closer to the final brilliance of the altarpiece that waits, patient and hollow, for the life I am about to give it. We are only just beginning to uncover the depth of this silence, so let us move forward into the next stage of our labor, where the materials transform even further and the spirit of the studio reveals its true enduring power. I pause my grinding, letting the glass muller come to a gentle controlled stop against the marble. The silence that rushes back into the room is not empty. It is thick and textured, heavy with the weight of expectation. I lift the muller, and the sight of the pigment satisfies a deep primal part of me. The lapis lazuli, once a stubborn, impenetrable rock, is now a concentrated, brilliant mound of ultramarine powder. It looks like the dust of the night sky is itself. I set the tool down carefully, the glass clicking against the stone with a sound that feels final. My hands are stained deep blue, the lines of my skin mapped out in mineral. I walk over to a small weathered wooden table where a bowl of water and a coarse cloth sit waiting. Washing my hands is a ritual of its own, a transition between elements. I scrub the blue away, watching it swirl into the water like clouds in a storm, then dry my fingers on the rough linen. The air in the studio remains cool, a stark, refreshing contrast to the humid heat radiating off the stone walls outside. I take a moment to look around the studio. It is a masterpiece of organized chaos. On the high shelves, jars of every imaginable pigment are lined up like soldiers. Vibrant vermilion from Cinnabar, sunny ochre from the hills of Tuscany, Latin yellow and the dark moody umbers. They represent the world in its rawest form. I walk to the window and pull the velvet curtain back just a fraction. A single sharp beam of sunlight cuts through the dimness, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. For a fleeting second, the city of Florence invades my sanctuary. I hear the distant melodic shouting of a street vendor selling fresh figs, and the sharp clip-clop of a horse trotting down the alleyway. A pigeon cooes on the windowsill, its feathers iridescent in the light. It is a reminder that while the world outside is in constant motion, rushing toward its own future, I am anchored here in the slow, deliberate present. I let the curtain fall back into place, plunging the room once more into that comfortable, amber-tone gloom. The work is not done and my mind is already back on the marble slab. I reach for the ochre now. It is a lighter, softer stone and it crumbles under the first firm press of the muller. It lacks the resistance of the lapis, offering a different kind of satisfaction, one of fluidity and ease. I begin again, the girl returning this time slightly higher in pitch, a rhythmic hum that vibrates through the bones of the house. I imagine the painters who sat in this exact spot centuries before me, their hands moving in these same circles, their breaths hitching at the same moments of discovery. We are connected by this sound, by this labor. It is the language of the guild, a secret tongue understood only by those who have spent days, weeks, and years grinding the color of life onto these cold slabs. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the motion become purely mechanical. My shoulder muscles shift, loosening, falling into a cadence that requires no thought. My mind begins to wander not to the chores of the studio or the demands of the master, but to the nature of the color itself. Ochre is the earth. It is the soil of the fields that stretch out beyond the city gates, the color of the sun-baked terracotta tiles that cover the rooftops of every house in Florence. When I grind this, I am not just creating paint, I am pulverizing the very foundation of my home. It is a grounding act. It reminds me that every grand image, every towering saint, and every golden halo begins with something as humble and grounded as the dirt beneath our feet. I continue the motion, my rhythm unwavering. The powder begins to mount up, a soft golden tan ridge that looks like the rolling hills of the countryside. I feel a sense of pride, a quiet internal joy that only the patient can understand. There is no one to watch me, no audience to applaud the precision of my grind. Yet the work is done with as much care as if the Pope himself were standing over my shoulder. That is the dignity of the craft. It is done for the sake of the beauty itself, for the integrity of the material, and for the peace that comes with doing a task well. The air around the slab is now thick with the scent of the ochre, a dusty, clean smell like a library shelf that has not been disturbed for a century. I breathe it in, letting it fill my lungs. It is a smell that tastes like history. I check the consistency again, drawing the muller through the pile. It is smooth, almost buttery, perfect. I reach for the glass palette knife, its flexible metal blade scraping the fine powder from the marble. It makes a sharp, satisfying sound as it lifts the pigment. I pile the golden dust into a small clay dish, ready for the next step, mixing with the oil. But for now, I remain with the rhythm, the grind, the beautiful repetitive stillness that holds the studio together like mortar in a brick wall. The day is far from over, and the transition of the colors is only just beginning. I set the dish of ochre aside, its golden hue catching the stray light from the edge of the curtain, and I feel a distinct shift in the atmosphere of the room. The initial tension of the day has evaporated, replaced by a deep, settled calm. My hands, once restless with the urgency of the morning's chores, now move with a fluid, liquid grace. There is a profound honesty in this work. There are no shortcuts. If I were to lift the Muller early, if I were to cut the cycle short, the paint would be gritty, the brush would catch, and the final face of the Madonna would look fractured, scarred by my impatience. The realization that my dedication determines the perfection of the divine image adds a layer of weight to every movement. It is a burden, certainly, but it is also a gift to know that one's own hands are a necessary component in the creation of greatness. I look toward the corner where the master's brushes are kept, organized by size and hair density, waiting for these very pigments to coat their bristles. They seem to wait with an anticipation of their own. I have learned over these past years that to be an apprentice is to be a ghost in the machine of creation. I am the silent engine. I provide the fuel, the color, the foundation so that the master can cast the light. I move back to the central workbench, my footsteps muffled by the layer of dust on the floorboards, a fine multicolored carpet of our collective labor. I pick up a small vial of linseed oil, cold pressed and golden, clearer than water. This is the liquid that will bind the earth to the canvas, the medium that allows the light to travel through the layers of paint, giving it that legendary translucent depth. I begin the final phase of this particular batch. I pour a small, precise well of oil into the center of the pile of ground ochre. The powder drinks it in greedily. I use the glass muller again, but not to grind. This time to mix, to fold, to coax the pigment into a paste that is smooth, thick, and consistent. The sound changes from the abrasive, hungry grr of the dry grind to a soft, wet, rhythmic slurp of oil meeting powder. It is a luxurious tactile sound. I watch as the ochre transforms from a dry, dusty heap into a rich, buttery substance. It ripples under the glass, folding over itself like molten gold. This is the moment of transmutation where the raw earth becomes the artist's medium. It is an intoxicating experience. The smell of the oil is rich and heavy, a scent that defines my life. It is the smell of the Renaissance. I feel the viscosity change as I work, the paste becoming more resistant, more substantial. My arm grows warm, the muscles flexing with the effort of pushing the thick mass, but I welcome the fatigue. It is a sign of work well done, a physical manifestation of my contribution to the altarpiece. I find myself lost in the swirling patterns I create on the marble, mesmerized by the way the light catches the wet oil. I can see the potential in this mixture. It will be the base for the garments, the architectural shadows, the very skin of the figures. I am creating the building blocks of reality. As I work, I think of the people who will stand before this finished painting. They will see only the saints, the glory of the heavens, the agony of the crucifixion, or the grace of the Holy Mother. They will not see the hours of grinding, the aching shoulders, the blue-stained fingers, or the quiet, lonely labor of an apprentice in a dim, velvet-curtained room. That is as it should be. The work is meant to be invisible, seamless, and eternal. I am the architect of the invisible. I carefully scrape the now perfect ochre paste into a glass jar, ensuring every last drop is collected with the palette knife. My movements are precise, habitual, and deeply content. There is no desire to be anywhere else. The outside world, with its politics, its plague, and its petty squabbles, is a million miles away from this marble slab. In this room, there is only the order of the craft. I have created a small piece of order in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable. If you have ever felt the need to escape the noise of your own life and find solace in the rhythm of a focused, creative task, then you are a traveler on the same path as I am. Please consider subscribing and following our journey as we continue to pull back the curtain on these quiet, historical moments, ensuring that the legacy of such focused craft lives on in our collective memory. As I kept the jar and label it with a small scrap of parchment, I feel a sense of profound completion. The ochre is ready, the lapis is waiting, and the day is moving toward its close. I take a deep breath, the air in the studio feeling heavy and warm, like a blanket wrapped around the shoulders of the house. I am ready to begin the next color, and the rhythm of the studio is waiting to welcome me back. The rhythm of the studio is a demanding master, yet it is a gentle one. As I move to clean the slab for the next stage of the afternoon, the scraping of the palette knife creates a sharp ringing tone that echoes in the rafters. I am careful to remove every microscopic particle of the ochre. To mix it with the next pigment would be a disaster, a mudding of the purity that the master demands. There is no room for error when one is dealing with materials that cost a fortune. I use a clean rag, soak in a bit of turpentine, the sharp, acidic scent cutting through the mellow, oily atmosphere of the room. The marble turns cold and stark again under my hands, waiting like a blank canvas for the next act of creation. My mind wanders briefly to the outside world, to the Piazza della Signoria, where the great minds of our age congregate. I wonder if they too feel the weight of their own work, or if they find it as exhilarating as I find this simple, tactile labor. I suspect that even in the highest circles of philosophy and politics, the same desire to shape, to refine, and to perfect must exist. We are all in our own way grinding stones to create something that outlasts us. I reach for the next component, a heavy, dense piece of cinnabar. It is a striking violet red, a mineral that demands respect. When I pick it up, it feels colder and heavier than the ochre. It carries the weight of fire and blood. I set it upon the marble with a deliberate, firm motion. My hands are beginning to feel the ache of the day, a dull throb in the wrist that reminds me of my humanity. But I do not stop. The flow state is too precious, too elusive to break. I press the mueller down, and this time the sound is different. It is a dry, crisp screech that turns quickly into a deep, rhythmic groove as the red powder begins to form. It is the color of the robes of the saints, the color of the passion of the Christ, the color that will draw the viewer's eye from across the cathedral. I'm not just creating a pigment, I'm creating a focal point for the soul. I focus on the motion, a perfect circle over and over, thousands of times. My breathing slows again, finding the cadence of the grind. I notice how the dust rises in a very fine, almost invisible mist, catching the light like blood-red stars in the dimness of the studio. I am careful not to inhale it, for we are taught that the earth, when broken, can be as dangerous as it is beautiful. This is a lesson in respect for nature, for the hidden properties of the stones we take from the mountains. I feel a sense of kinship with the miners who pulled this stone from the earth and with the sailors who brought it across the Mediterranean. My work is the final link in a long chain of effort that spans the world. This is what it means to be part of a guild, to be part of the living history of Florence. My eyes never leave the slab. I watch the red pigment deepen and smooth, losing its crystalline grit, becoming a thick, vibrant substance that seems to glow even in this low light. It is as if the cinnabar contains a latent heat that is being released by the pressure of the glass. I feel the warmth of the work radiating into my palms. It is a strange alchemical heat, a connection between the inorganic stone and my own living, breathing body. I'm not just a bystander in this process. I'm the engine of the change. I think about the altarpiece itself, the vast wooden structure waiting in the main workshop. It is skeletal, bare, and silent. It needs these colors to wake it up. It needs the life that I am currently pouring onto this slab. Every minute I spend grinding is a minute of life. I am transferring from my own veins into the heart of the painting. It is an act of devotion, a service rendered to beauty and to God. The silence of the studio feels absolute now, as if the room itself is holding its breath, waiting to see what I will produce. I am the only one awake in this sanctuary of art, the only one keeping the pulse of the studio beating, while the rest of the world rests or wanders. I find a strange comfort in this solitude. There is no one to judge my pace, no one to critique the angle of my muller, only the objective truth of the pigment. If it is smooth, it is right. If it is consistent, it is worthy. This is the only standard that matters. As the pile of red powder grows, I feel a shift in the air, a sense of mounting intensity. The red is so vibrant that it seems to pull the shadow into itself. It is a color of power. I push the muller with renewed energy, my shoulders feeling the strain, but my spirit feeling light. I am in the zone, a place where time and space collapse, leaving only the sound, the movement, and the transformation of matter. The hours pass, marked only by the shifting angle of the light coming from under the velvet curtain, which now warns me that the sun is beginning its descent. The day is coming to an end, yet I have never felt more present. I am the apprentice, the laborer, the silent partner in the creation of a miracle, and I am content to grind until the last thread of light disappears from the room. The red is nearly ready to be oiled, and I feel a surge of anticipation for that next transformative step. I am ready to bind the fire of the earth to the grace of the oil, and in that union, the true magic of our work will be revealed. The transformation of the cinnabar continues, the rhythmic friction drawing the color out from its dormant state. It is a stubborn pigment, resistant to the pressure, yet I am more stubborn still. My hands move with a calculated intensity, the glass muller tracing perfect, overlapping orbits that cover every inch of the marble. I am conscious of the weight I am applying, adjusting my stance to ensure the pressure is constant. If the pressure falters, the pigment will remain coarse. If it is too uneven, the grinding will be patchy. This is the geometry of the craft, an unspoken math that governs the quality of every brush stroke the master will later lay upon the gesso. I find my mind drifting toward the chemistry of it all. How is it that a simple red rock found in the dark crevices of the earth can be forced through sheer physical effort to become the vibrant living color of a saint's mantle? It is a kind of magic, but one that is earned. There's no room here for shortcuts or spells. There's only the sweat on my brow and the endurance of my muscles. I am becoming one with the tools, the glass and the stone, an extension of my own skeletal structure. The low grrr has become a steady, comforting hum, a sound that resonates deep within my chest. It is the sound of progress. It is the sound of the Renaissance being built, one grain at a time. I look at my reflection in the polished surface of the muller, distorted and darkened by the shadow of the curtains, and I see someone who is changing as well. I am not the same apprentice who started this morning. The repetitive labor has stripped away the layers of fatigue and distraction, leaving behind a core of focused, singular purpose. I am, in this moment, a vessel for the craft. The heat in the room seems to have subsided, the late afternoon air cooling as the shadow of the cathedral reaches across our quiet street. The studio feels like a private island in the middle of a vast, turbulent sea of Florentine life. I am safe here. I am purposeful here. I watch the red dust. Now, so fine it moves like silk, shifting in the microscopic currents of air I create with my movement. It is almost hypnotic. I find myself wondering if the master ever feels this same peace, or if his mind is always racing with the next commission, the next negotiation with a patron, the next grand vision for a ceiling or an altar. He moves in a world of high stakes and high expectations, while I live here in the world of the fundamental. And yet, I realize his work would be impossible without me. It would be impossible without the slow, grinding grace that I provide. This realization doesn't make me feel prideful, but rather humbled. I am a necessary link in a chain that stretches across history. I am the silent custodian of the materials that will carry the weight of human devotion for centuries to come. The cinnabar is almost at the desired consistency. I scrape a small portion, testing it between my thumb and forefinger. It is soft, almost greasy, and leaves a vibrant, perfectly opaque stain on my skin. It is ready. I reach for the oil, my movements deliberate and practiced. A small splash, a golden droplet in the midst of the red, and I begin to fold it in. The mixture thickens immediately, the red becoming deeper, darker, and more intense. It is no longer just a color. It is a substance with weight and character. As I work the oil into the pigment, the air in the room becomes saturated with the sharp, clean, slightly metallic scent of the cinnabar and the earthy, organic tang of the oil. It is a perfume that defines my existence. I am so deeply immersed in the process that I almost don't hear the faint, muffled sound of the clock tower in the distance, striking the hour. The day is ending. The light is failing, and yet I am still here, locked in this cycle of creation. I feel a sense of profound satisfaction. I have spent the day in the service of beauty, and the evidence of my labor is spread out before me. The jars of pigment, the clean work marble, the lingering scent of my work. My muscles ache, a deep resonant tiredness that is not unpleasant, but rather a sign of a life well lived. I look at the pile of red paste and feel a sense of completion. It is a perfect, vibrant red, ready to be used to express the most intense human emotions: love, sacrifice, agony, and grace. I have given it its voice. I scraped the paste into the final jar, wiping the marble clean one last time with a heavy oil-stained cloth. The surface is once again cold, dark, and expectant. I feel a sudden wave of tranquility, a sense of having fulfilled my duty, not just to the master, but to the art itself. The world outside will continue its frantic pace. The sun will set, and the city will fall into the uneasy slumber of the night. But in here, there is a lingering resonance of the work, a peaceful vibration that hangs in the air. I have played my part, and that is enough. I gather my tools, placing the molar carefully on its felt pad. The studio is quiet, and for the first time, I allow myself to lean back and breathe, truly breathe, letting the stillness of the room wash over me, settling into my bones like the dust from the minerals I have spent the day awakening. I am an apprentice, but in the silence of this room, I am a keeper of the light. I close my eyes, and for a moment, the rhythm of the grinding remains in my ears, a fading echo that promises when the sun rises again, we will return to the stone, and the work beautiful and endless will begin anew. The transition from the intense fiery red of the cinnabar to the deep silent rest of the evening feels like a physical shift in the room's gravity. I stand back from the workbench, my hands heavy and still listening to the subtle settling of the studio. The wood of the beams creaks ever so slightly as the temperature drops, a sharp contrast to the constant warmth I generated while grinding. I take a moment to survey the fruits of my day, the jars of blue and ochre, and the final vibrant red, all lined up against the wall like a row of precious captured energies. They look beautiful in the dying light, their surfaces gleaming with the oil that I have carefully worked into them. The smell of the studio, a heady, complex blend of linseed oil, turpentine, cold stone, and the sharp metallic tang of mineral dust, is more than just an odor to me. It is the scent of a sanctuary. It is here that I have found my focus, my rhythm, and my quiet purpose. As I begin to stow the heavier tools away, tucking them into their designated velvet-lined drawers, I reflect on the nature of this existence. Many in Florence would look at my life, the dirt under my fingernails, the sore muscles, the long hours in a windowless curtained room, and see only the drudgery of a servant. They do not understand the hidden transcendent joy of the process. They do not know what it is to be so fully committed to a task that the self disappears, leaving only the work and the moment. It is a form of meditation, a way of anchoring the spirit in a world that is otherwise spinning out of control. I moved to the center of the studio, picking up a broom made of stiff straw. I sweep the floor with slow, careful strokes, gathering the fine dust that has settled there throughout the day. It is a ritual of closure. To leave the workspace dirty is to leave the mind cluttered. And I have learned that the next morning's success is built upon the order I established tonight. As the shadows lengthen, stretching across the uneven floorboards, I feel a sense of profound gratitude. I am an apprentice, but I am also a guardian of the techniques that allow the beauty of this age to manifest. I think of the master tomorrow morning, walking into this room and seeing these jars, knowing exactly the effort that went into them, and finding his own inspiration in the purity of the color. That silent communication between us, the respect for the craft, is the foundation of our bond. I reach the corner where the heavy curtains meet the wall, and I pause. Outside, the city is beginning to glow with the flickering light of evening torches and the first stars emerging over the Duomo. It is a beautiful, dangerous, and exhilarating time to be alive. And yet, I am perfectly content to stay here in the cool, dark comfort of my work. I have learned to find my own light in the shadows, my own rhythm in the silence, and my own value in the patient, repetitive act of creation. My labor is a testament to the idea that greatness is not merely a flash of inspiration, but the accumulation of thousands of tiny, dedicated efforts. As I reach for the heavy iron latch on the door, I take one last look at the room. It is waiting for me, patient and quiet, ready for the next day's cycle. There is a deep, abiding peace in this knowledge. Sleepy History Tales is a sleep history storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. This sense of peace, this connection to the past, and the simple grounding power of the craft are what I hope to carry with me into the night. My work here is done, but the story of the paint, the story of the studio, and the story of the apprentice continues to live in the quiet spaces of the mind, where history and imagination meet to offer rest and renewal. I push the door open, the heavy wood groaning in greeting, and step out into the cool evening air of Florence, the rhythm of the studio still humming softly in my blood, a gentle, persistent reminder of the beauty that can be found in the most humble and patient of tasks. The cobblestones outside the studio feel uneven under my feet, a sharp contrast to the solid, flat marble slab I have spent my entire day leaning against. The transition from the artificial, controlled stillness of the workshop to the erratic, bustling energy of Florence is jarring. Yet it serves as a necessary reminder of where I exist in the broader tapestry of this city. People pass by in a blur of motion, merchants closing their stores, noblemen cloaked in fine wool, and the occasional friar walking with his head bowed, lost in his own silent world. I, however, carry a different kind of silence with me. My clothes, even beneath my apron, are dusted with the microscopic remnants of the minerals I ground today. There is a streak of blue on my sleeve, a faint smear of red on my collar, and a general layer of golden ochre clinging to my hair. I am quite literally a walking canvas of the studio. I don't try to brush it off. To wear these colors is a badge of honor, a mark of the apprentice who has earned his stripes through sweat and stone. I walk toward the small cramped room I call home in the back of the building, my legs heavy, my shoulders bearing the dull rhythmic ache that has become my most familiar companion. It is a good ache. It is the physical manifestation of work completed. I think of the long nights ahead and the mornings that will follow, each one a repeat of the same cycle. Many will find this monotony so crushing, but for me it is the opposite. It is the bedrock of my stability. In a world of shifting political tides where families rise and fall overnight and the power of the church and the state is always in flux, the absolute consistency of the grinding process is my anchor. I know exactly what the stone will do. I know exactly how the pigment will respond. There is no deceit in a rock. There is no betrayal in a mullah. It is a relationship of pure, unadulterated honesty. I reach the threshold of my small quarters and light a single tallow candle. The flame sputters, casting long dancing shadows against the bare plaster walls, turning the small room into a flickering mimicry of the studio I just left. I sit on my straw pallet, the stiffness of my body finally finding relief as I stretch my legs. I close my eyes, and even now I can hear it. The grrr, the slurp of the palette knife. The sounds are etched into the auditory canals of my mind, a persistent, comforting loop. It is as if the studio has followed me, not as a physical place, but as a state of mind. I find myself wondering about the future. Will I always be the one behind the slab? Will there come a day when I too stand with a brush in my hand, commanding the color that I have spent so many years learning to tame? It is a thought that brings both excitement and a lingering respectful fear. The jump from apprentice to master is not just a change in title, it is a fundamental shift in the soul. It requires not just the knowledge of the chemistry of paint, but the vision to see what that paint can become. I am not there yet, and in truth, I am in no hurry. There is a sacredness to the apprenticeship, a period of gestation where the craft is absorbed into the marrow of one's bones. To rush it would be to cheapen the result, so I will continue to grind. I will continue to be the ghost in the machine, the silent provider of the beauty that the world craves. I reach for a piece of dry bread and a small cup of watered down wine. The meager meal feeling like a feast after a day of such intense focused work. I eat slowly, savoring the simple pleasure of the texture, the way the bread fills the void left by the afternoon's labor. My mind wanders to the painting again, the altarpiece that will eventually emerge from this raw, dusty, chaotic potential. It is a vision of heaven, an attempt to capture the divine in the medium of the material. And it is my hands, calloused, blue-stained, tired hands, that have made this possible. There is a profound, quiet dignity in that. As I finish my meal and lie back on the pallet, the candle flame finally dies, leaving me in the cool, dark safety of the night. The silence of the house is total, yet it is not empty. It is a breathing, living thing, a space where the day's events settle and solidify into memory. I am an apprentice in Florence in 1495, and I am exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I am meant to do. And as I drift towards sleep, the rhythm of the work carries me forward, a gentle, inevitable tide washing over the shores of the night, preparing me for the light that will return to the studio in the morning. The darkness of the night is not a void, but a velvet curtain that allows the mind to replay the textures of the day. As I lie upon my pallet, the faint, lingering scent of linseed oil clings to my hair, a fragrant ghost of the studio. I find that I do not dream of the grand finished altarpiece. Instead, I dream of the raw components. I dream of the weight of the lapis lazuli, the cold, smooth resistance of the marble under the glass, and the way the dust motes swirl in the shafts of light. These are the building blocks of my reality, and they are beautiful in their own unadorned state. I am learning that the masterpiece is not the only thing worthy of reverence. The journey of the material, from stone to powder to paint, is a sacred process that deserves its own silent applause. My thoughts shift to the other apprentices in the guild. We rarely speak of these things, yet I sense a shared understanding in the way we handle our tools. There is a brotherhood in the craft, a silent communion of hands that have all known the same fatigue and the same satisfaction. We are the ones who hold the foundation of the art world in our stained palms. If we were to disappear, if the grinding were to stop, the grand visions of the masters would remain locked in their minds, unable to manifest on the wooden panels that wait so patiently in the dark. It is a heavy realization, but it doesn't weigh me down. It gives me wings. To be useful is to be connected to the heartbeat of the world. As the early morning light begins to creep through the narrow gap in my window, a pale gray herald of the coming day, I feel a stir of anticipation. The rest was brief, but it was deep, and my body feels recharged. The stiffness in my shoulders replaced by a subtle ready tension. I rise, not with the sluggishness of a man who must go to a chore, but with the steady pace of one who is returning to his calling. I dress in my simple tunic, the fabric familiar against my skin, and walk out into the quiet corridor. The house is still asleep. The city outside is barely beginning to breathe, and yet I feel as if the studio is already waiting for me, its door slightly ajar, its silence beckoning. I enter the workshop, and the smell hits me, that wonderful, earthy, slightly medicinal scent that is the perfume of creation. I walk to the marble slab, my hand tracing the edge of the stone. It is still cool from the night, a touch of frozen time. I think of the work that lies ahead, the preparations of new colors, the mixing of binders, the endless beautiful cycle of refinement. There is no monotony here, only the constant shifting discovery of what the material can yield. Each batch of pigment is slightly different, requiring a different touch, a different pressure, a different level of patience. It is a perpetual lesson in humility. I am not the master of the material. I am its partner. I must listen to what it needs, feel how it responds, and adjust my effort to match its unique properties. It is a conversation without words, a language of tactile feedback that transcends the limits of language. My focus this morning is the malachite, a vibrant, lush green that will be used for the foliage in the background of the scene. It is a challenging pigment, prone to clumping, and it demands a careful, deliberate touch. I prepare my station with the same reverence I showed the lapis and the cinnabar. I lay out the cloths, the palette knives, the glass muller, and the mortar. I feel a sense of clarity that is almost crystalline. My mind is a blank slate ready to be filled with the rhythm of the work. I am, as I have always been, the silent, dedicated heart of the workshop, and I am proud of the role I play. Sleepy History Tales combines the power of AI to reimagine fictional historical tales, bringing peace, relaxation, and positive emotional values to our listeners. This, I realize, is what it truly means to be a creator. It's not about the glory at the end, but about the dedication to the process. It's about finding peace in the middle of the work and letting that peace radiate outward, touching everything that I create. I take a deep breath, pick up the heavy piece of green stone and place it on the marble. The first contact is electric, a promise of the work to come. I press down, the marble begins its rotation, and the familiar grounding grr echoes once more through the rafters. The day has begun, and with it, the beautiful, endless labor that keeps the soul of art alive. If you have enjoyed this journey into the quiet, patient world of the Florentine apprentice, please consider following along as we continue to explore the hidden stories of history, ensuring that the legacy of such focused craft lives on in our collective memory. The journey is just beginning, and there are many more colors to grind, many more stories to tell, and many more moments of peace to be found in the rhythm of the work. The malachite is a demanding, stubborn beauty. As I begin the grind, the green dust rises not in a soft mist, but in tiny, distinct crystalline sparks that seem to catch the morning light even in the dimness of this room. The sound it makes is sharp, a high-pitched, metallic rasping that vibrates through the bones of my wrist. It is a different energy than the deep, resonant blue of the lapis or the earthy, grounding warmth of the ochre. This is the energy of life itself, the color of the meadows and the hillsides that cradle the city of Florence. I find myself lost in the rhythm of the work once more, my body adjusting to the unique resistance of the green stone. I am not simply crushing a rock, I am releasing a color, setting it free from its geological prison. My movements are precise, a perfect circular motion that leaves no room for hesitation. I am aware of every inch of the marble slab, keeping the pigment moving, preventing it from caking, ensuring that the powder is as fine as the silt of the river Arno. As the morning wears on, the studio begins to feel more alive. The muffled sounds of the street start to filter through the heavy curtains, the distant melodic cries of the flower sellers, the heavy rhythmic thud of a carpenter's hammer from across the alley, and the occasional sharp ringing of a church bell. I feel a strange sense of detachment from all of it. They are in the world of time and urgency, while I am in the world of duration and presence. My work does not have a deadline in the same way their commerce does. My work has a standard of perfection, and that is a far more demanding taskmaster. I pause, as I always do, to wipe my brow and check the consistency of the green. It is not yet ready. I can still feel the faint, uneven grit of the larger particles. I need more patience, more force, more time. I lean back into the work, letting the rhythm consume me. My mind drifts to the master and the painting he is creating. He is working with forms and figures, with the grand architecture of composition, with the subtle light of the soul on a painted face. He sees the whole, I see the parts. I see the foundation of his glory. I am the one who makes the green of the leaves, the blue of the sky, the red of the blood. I am the silent, indispensable hand that translates the master's vision into the physical reality of pigment. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in this realization. I don't need the credit, and I certainly don't need the fame. I have the work. I have the silence. I have the beauty of the color beneath my fingers. As I continue to grind, the malachite begins to transform, the sharpness of the rasping giving way to a smoother, more fluid sound. It is a subtle change, but to my ears, it is profound. The powder is becoming creamy, a rich, vibrant verdant shade that promises the lush depth of the forest. I am so deeply involved in this process that I am startled by the sudden, sharp, and unexpected intrusion of a knock at the studio door. It is a sound that shouldn't belong here, a harsh, aggressive, and impatient rapping that breaks the sacred silence. I have worked so hard to cultivate. I do not stop grinding, not immediately. I let the muller make one more perfect rotation and then another until I'm satisfied with the transition of the pigment. Only then do I set the tool down. Its click against the marble sounding like a gunshot in the quiet room. I stand up, wiping my hands on the stained heavy cloth at my waist, and walk toward the door. I know who it is, or at least I know the type. A courier, perhaps, or a merchant with a message for the master. Someone who lives in a world of urgency and doesn't understand the sanctity of the work. I open the door, and the light from the outside is blinding. A stark, white, and unforgiving glare that makes me squint. There, standing on the threshold, is a young boy, breathless and wide-eyed, clutching a sealed scroll. He looks at me, and my stained hands, and my dust-covered tunic, and he pauses, his impatience momentarily forgotten, stunned by the sight of the work I do. I look at him, and for a moment we are two different worlds colliding. I am the earth, and he is the air. I am the silence, and he is the noise. I take the scroll, my movements calm and deliberate, and he steps back as if sensing the weight of the space I inhabit. I close the door, the heavy wood latching with a satisfying final thud, and I return to the silence. I do not open the scroll. That is for the master. I set it on the table, away from the dust, and I return to my marble slab. The malachite is still waiting, its color vibrant and deep, and the rhythm is there ready for me to reclaim it. I pick up the molar, the cool glass feeling familiar and reassuring in my hand. I close my eyes, And the grrr begins again, the steady, grounding, hypnotic pulse that connects me to the earth, to the history of my craft, and to the eternal silent labor of love that is my life here in the studio. The final light of the afternoon clings to the edges of the room like a tired traveler seeking rest, and I find myself moving with a slow, deliberate grace that mirrors the fading day. I have spent these hours meticulously cleaning the marble slab, the rhythmic scrape of the metal blade creating a sharp, clean sound that slices through the heavy oil-scented air. There is no residue left, no trace of the vibrant, stubborn red that just moments ago occupied this space. It is as if the work never happened, and yet the sealed jars lining the shelves stand as silent, irrefutable evidence of the labor performed. This cycle of presence and absence is the pulse of the studio. I'm reminded again of the impermanence of things, how everything we touch, everything we create, eventually returns to a state of stillness. My hands, though tired and stained with the faint, indelible mark of the matter, feel lighter now that the task is complete. I walk to the center of the room and stand in the silence, listening to the house breathe. It is a familiar, comforting sound. The creak of the floorboards, the rustle of the velvet curtains, the soft, distant hum of a city that never truly sleeps. I feel a deep, abiding connection to this place. It is more than just a workshop. It is an extension of my own internal architecture, a physical manifestation of the quiet, disciplined life I have chosen. There are no distractions here, no political noise, no petty rivalries of the guild, only the objective, grounding reality of the work. I think about the master and how he will eventually come to this workbench and find the colors waiting for him, perfectly ground, perfectly mixed, perfectly ready to be transformed into something that will speak to the souls of men for centuries. He will not see me, nor will he feel the ache in my shoulders, but he will be able to perform his miracles because I have done my part. That is enough for me. There is a profound, quiet dignity in being the foundation upon which greatness is built. As I move toward the door to extinguish the last of the candles, I pause, my hand hovering over the iron latch. I take one last look at the studio, at the rows of pigments, at the empty white waiting slab. It is a beautiful, solemn, and holy sight. I have given this day to the craft, and the craft has given me a sense of peace that is as rare as it is precious. I push the door open, the sound of the evening air rushing in to meet me, and I step out, leaving the sanctuary behind, but carrying its rhythm with me into the night. The walk back to my room is quiet, the cobblestones cool and damp under my feet. The city is alive with the soft amber glow of lanterns and the distant melodic sounds of vespers from the neighboring churches. It is a world of movement and transition, and yet I am anchored, held steady by the work I have done. I reach my small room, the space small and unassuming, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the studio, yet it feels just as much like a sanctuary. I light a small taper, the flame flickering and casting long, dancing shadows that mimic the ones in the workshop. I sit on my pallet, my body finally letting go of the tension of the day, and I close my eyes. I can still hear the phantom sound of the Mueller against the marble, a faint rhythmic grrr that echoes in the quiet chambers of my mind. It is a beautiful sound, a testament to the order I have created in the midst of a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable. I am an apprentice, a student of the craft, a keeper of the light, and I am content. The night stretches out before me, a vast dark canvas waiting for the morning's inspiration, and I am ready to rest, to rejuvenate, and to return to the stone, the color, and the eternal, patient, and beautiful work that defines my life here in the heart of Florence. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint metallic scent of the river Arno, a sharp contrast to the warm, oil-thickened atmosphere of the studio. I enter the workshop before the sun has fully cleared the rooftops, my boots clicking softly against the flagstones. The room is steeped in a cool silver-gray light, the velvet curtains having held the temperature steady through the night. Everything is exactly as I left it. The marble slab cleansed and cold, the rows of pigments, silent sentinels of the work to come, and a heavy wooden workbench scarred by the tools of masters long dead. I find a peculiar comfort in this continuity. Today, the task is different. I am not working with mineral pigments or ground roots. I am turning my attention to the creation of a soft, delicate lead white, a process that requires extreme caution and a steady, almost surgical focus. Lead is heavy, dense, and potentially caustic. It must be handled with a respect that borders on fear. I don my heavy leather apron and wrap a cloth around my face to guard against the dust. The grind begins, but it is a slow, methodical, and profoundly dangerous dance. The muller feels heavier today. The resistance of the lead against the marble more pronounced. I move in smaller, tighter circles, my breathing shallow, my awareness heightened. Every particle of this white is a potential ingredient for the highlights of the altarpiece, the very light that will appear to shine from within the painted skin of the figures. It is the color of grace, the color of divine illumination, and it must be pure. I am deeply aware that my own safety is at stake, and yet I do not falter. The rhythm of the grind remains constant, a steady, hypnotic pulse that keeps the air around the slab clear and the work moving forward. I think of the master who will eventually take this white and use it to model the face of the Madonna. He will paint the light of her eyes, the radiance of her skin, the delicate, ethereal glow of her features, using the very powder I am creating right now. There is a profound, almost spiritual weight to this realization. I am not just preparing paint. I am crafting the light that will illuminate the soul of the viewer. The room is silent, save for the rhythmic grinding sound of the muller, a low, persistent drone that seems to vibrate through the floorboards and into the foundation of the house. I feel connected to this place, to the history of the workshop, and to the eternal patient struggle of the artist to manifest the unseen. As the hours pass, the white powder accumulates, a brilliant, blindingly clear heap that catches the faint morning light and glows with a strange internal energy. It is the most challenging pigment I have worked with yet, requiring a level of precision that makes my muscles ache with a sharp, focused tension. I don't complain. I don't pause longer than necessary. I am in the grip of the craft, a state of being where the ego is silenced and the work becomes the only reality. The outside world, with its frantic pace and its noisy demands, feels like a distant, irrelevant dream. I am in the belly of the whale, the heart of the creation, and there is nowhere else I would rather be. I think of the other apprentices, the ones who complain about the long hours, the ones who dream of the day they will leave the studio and become masters themselves. I feel a sense of pity for them. They are missing the point. They are looking at the finish line, while the entire beautiful and eternal race is happening right here, in the grinding, in the mixing, in the patient application of skill and time. I am the apprentice, the silent, dedicated heart of the studio, and I am finding a level of peace that is simply not available to those who define their success by the outcome of their labor. I finish the grind, the white powder perfectly fine, perfectly consistent, and I begin to fold it into the oil. The change is immediate and transformative. The white becomes luminous, a thick, rich paste that seems to vibrate with a life of its own. I clean the slab, the metal scraper catching the last of the white, the surface once again becoming cold, dark, and expectant. I have done my part. The light is prepared, the grace is ready to be painted, and the day is moving toward its close. I feel a sense of profound, quiet accomplishment, a completion that goes deep into the marrow of my bones. I am a builder of the invisible, a weaver of the light, and as the sun sets outside, casting long orange shadows across the floor, I am ready to rest, knowing that the work, beautiful, patient, and eternal, will be waiting for me when the morning returns. The night air is thick with the scent of damp stone and the faint, sweet perfume of blooming jasmine from the gardens hidden behind the monastery walls. As I walk back to my room, the silence of the city is absolute, save for the occasional distant chime of a bell and the steady rhythmic sound of my own footsteps. I am tired, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that seems to have seeped into me from the very floorboards of the studio. It is a good tiredness, the kind that follows a day of honest, necessary labor. My hands are still slightly stained, the white of the lead pigment having left a ghostly trace in the cracks of my skin, a reminder of the delicate and dangerous work I performed today. I find myself looking at my hands in the pale moonlight, wondering how something so humble, so scarred and calloused, can be the instrument of such transformation. The lead white, that brilliant, luminous substance, is now sitting in a glass jar, waiting to be turned into the light of the divine. There is a weight to that, a responsibility that I feel even in the silence of the night. I am the gatekeeper of these materials, the one who ensures that they are ready to serve the master's vision. My room, when I finally enter it, feels small and safe, a cocoon against the vast, dark, and often uncertain world outside. I light a single candle, its flame dancing and swaying in the gentle draught that moves through the room, and I sit on my pallet, the familiar scratchy texture of the straw, a comfort against my aching back. I close my eyes and I am back in the studio, the sound of the molar against the marble filling my mind, a persistent, comforting drone that is the heartbeat of my existence. I find that I am not dreaming of the future, nor am I ruminating on the past. I am simply resting in the present, the work of the day settling into the bedrock of my memory. I think about the life of an apprentice in Florence in 1495. The long hours, the physical toll, the lack of recognition, the constant demanding nature of the craft, and I realize that for all the hardship, there is a rare elusive freedom in this path. I do not have to worry about the politics of the city, or the volatile shifts in the fortunes of the noble families, or the complex, dangerous debates that fill the halls of the university. My world is one of physical, measurable, and objective truth. A pigment is either ground to the right consistency or it is not. A mixture is either perfectly balanced or it is flawed. There is no gray area, no room for interpretation, no place for the ego to interfere with the reality of the work. This clarity is what sustains me. This simplicity is the source of my peace. I eat my piece of hard cheese and bread, the flavor simple and grounding, and I feel a sense of profound, quiet contentment. I have played my part, I have served the vision, and I have maintained the order of the studio. The master will come tomorrow. He will pick up the jars I have prepared, and he will continue the work that is larger than both of us. That is the nature of the apprenticeship, and I have learned to embrace it with my whole heart. As the candle flickers and dies, the room is plunged into a total velvet darkness, and I lie back, my thoughts drifting into the quiet spaces between sleep and wakefulness. The sound of the grinding continues in my mind, a rhythmic, hypnotic pulse that promises when the sun rises, we will return to the stone, and the work, beautiful and endless, will begin anew. I am at peace with the cycle. I am at peace with the solitude. And I am at peace with the knowledge that I am part of something that will outlive me, something that will carry the light of this age into the distant unknown future. The night is a bridge, and I am crossing it with a heart that is steady, a mind that is quiet, and a spirit that is ready to greet the morning's light, the morning's labor, and the morning's beauty, with the same focus, dedicated, and loving attention that defines every moment of my life in this sanctuary of art. The dawn light filters through the heavy velvet, turning the studio into a chamber of deep, muted bronze. I wake before the bells, my internal rhythm tuned to the quiet expectations of the workshop. The stillness here is profound, a heavy velvet-lined silence that seems to hold the very air in suspension. My hands move instinctively to the familiar tasks, igniting the small oil lamp, checking the moisture levels and inspecting the jars from the day before. Everything is stable. The pigments sit in their glass containers, glowing with a subdued potent energy. Today the work is of a different nature entirely. I am tasked with the processing of charcoal into the base for the underdrawings. It is the most primal of tasks, a return to the carbon-rich remnants of the hearth, a material that connects the art directly to the fire that keeps the studio warm. I pick up a piece of willow wood that has been fired to a perfect consistent black, and I begin to crush it upon the slab. The sound is dry, brittle, and soft, a shush that carries no metallic resonance, but instead a quiet, velvety friction. It is the sound of shadow. As I work, the dust settles on my skin, painting me in shades of deep, permanent gray. I find a strange, haunting beauty in this becoming part of the medium I am creating. There is no resistance here, only the complete willing surrender of the wood to the pressure of the muller. I work with a circular, sweeping motion, feeling the substance yield and transform beneath my palms. My mind is utterly empty, a void that mirrors the charcoal I am grinding. This is the ultimate essential base. Every figure, every limb, every fold of cloth in the grand altarpiece must first be mapped out in this very dust. I am literally building the scaffolding of the vision. The hours pass. The light shifts from bronze to gold, and I remain anchored to the slab, a silent gray-clad phantom in the heart of Florence. I think of the master's hand, the way he will hold the charcoal stick and trace the initial tentative lines of a saint's face. He will be looking for the spirit of the form, searching for the truth beneath the surface, and it is my labor that will provide him the medium for that search. This is not just manual work, it is an act of creation in its purest form. I am creating the possibility of everything else that will follow. I pause only to drink a few sips of water and to wipe the dust from my eyes. The studio is a haven, a place where the clamor of the city is reduced to a distant, muffled vibration, a reminder that the world is moving while I am still. I find a deep, quiet comfort in this. The work is demanding, but it is not draining. It is in fact regenerative. Each turn of the muller is a breath, each circle a beat of the heart. I am entirely in sync with the room, the slab, and the charcoal. I am the apprentice, the silent, dedicated heart of the studio, and I am finding a sense of belonging here that transcends the need for status or fame. As the afternoon wanes, the air grows cool and thin, and the shadows of the rafters seem to stretch out, reaching for the workbench like fingers. I finish the grinding, the charcoal now a fine, ethereal powder that feels like silk against my fingertips. I collect it with the same practiced precision I have used for every other pigment, the palette knife creating that sharp singular note against the stone. The work is done, the jar is filled, and the studio is once again a place of perfect order. I lean against the bench, feeling the pleasant familiar ache in my shoulders, and I watch the light fade. I have given the day to the charcoal, to the shadow, and to the foundational silence of the art. My spirit feels light, clarified by the process, and I am ready to step out of this gray-tone sanctuary and back into the vibrant, messy, and loud world of the street. But before I go, I take one last moment to appreciate the stillness, the lingering scent of the hearth, and the profound, quiet pride of knowing that this work will live, that it will be the source of a million lines, a million expressions, and a million moments of grace for those who will stand before the final, finished painting. The rhythm of the grind is etched into my soul, and as I walk to the door, I know that tomorrow I will return, and the work, beautiful, patient, and eternal, will begin anew. The dawn air today carries a sharp, biting chill that seeps through the cracks in the studio walls, a reminder that the season is turning outside these velvet-draped confines. I enter the space with a sense of urgent purpose, the cold forcing a quickening in my blood that feels like a renewed commitment to the craft. Today, the slab is reserved for a more exotic challenge, the grinding of resinous, amber-colored candlelight. It is a stubborn, sticky substance that defies the usual rhythm of my work. When I place it upon the marble, it refuses the bite of the muller, sliding and shifting like live coal. I must adjust my technique using a smaller, more focused pressure and a rapid, intense circular movement to generate the heat necessary to coax it into a powder. The sound it produces is unlike the others. It is a dry, frantic skittering that quickly gives way to a deeper, muffled thud as the resin begins to break down. My hands feel the resistance in a very tactile, almost combative way, my muscles straining against the stickiness of the material. I am acutely aware of every ripple in the resin, every fragment that resists the glass, and I lean into the challenge with a grin, recognizing that this is exactly what makes the apprenticeship so profound. It is not always a steady, flowing harmony. Sometimes it is a battle for control, a wrestling match with the very chemistry of the earth. I am not simply an observer here. I am a participant in the raw, messy struggle of creation. The studio feels particularly isolated this morning. The heavy velvet curtains blocking out a dull gray sky that threatens rain. I am the only source of warmth in this room, my movements generating a heat that keeps the chill at bay. The scent of the sandarak is distinct, a sharp, sweet, balsamic aroma that fills my senses and makes my head swim with a pleasant, intoxicating lightness. It is a scent that tastes like the resinous heart of a forest. As I grind, I find my thoughts shifting to the permanence of these materials. Sandarak, once ground and mixed, will act as the protective final layer, the varnish that shields the painting from the ravages of time, from the smoke of candles, and from the dust of the city. I am creating the armor for the altarpiece. I am the one who will ensure that the saint's eyes, the robes of the Madonna, and the gold of the heavens remain as vibrant in 500 years as they are the moment the master lays down his brush. This realization brings a sudden sharp clarity to my movements. I am not just a processor of pigments, I am a guardian of legacy. The weight of this task does not feel heavy. It feels like an anchor, grounding me in the reality of the work. I do not think of the master or the patron. I only think of the future viewers, the ones who will stand in this cathedral centuries from now and see the clarity of the work I am protecting today. I am building a bridge across time. The grind becomes more rhythmic, the skittering giving way to a smooth, efficient rotation. My breath hitches in time with the motion, my shoulders settling into a comfortable, productive flow. The room feels smaller now, more intimate, as if the walls have moved in to witness the precision of my work. I have reached the stage where the sandarak is a fine translucent powder, and the satisfaction of this shift is profound. I pause, my skin slick with a fine layer of sweat, and I look at the result. It's beautiful, a pale golden dust that looks like sunlight trapped in glass. I wipe my forehead, take a long drink of cool water, and prepare for the final oily phase. This is where the magic happens, where the stubborn resin becomes the liquid glass of the varnish. I add the solvent, drop by drop, watching the golden powder drink it in, and the mixture begins to thicken and clarify, becoming a honey-colored viscous amber that seems to glow in the dim light of the studio. I am a master of this change, a sorcerer in an apron of stained leather. The rest of the day passes in a blur of focused, deliberate motion, the rhythm of the work becoming a part of my very heartbeat. I feel as if I have achieved a state of grace, a moment where the task and the soul are perfectly aligned. As the light in the studio dies, leaving me in the gathering dark, I look at the jar of varnish, a small precious vessel of time, and I feel a sense of profound quiet peace. I have done my duty to the future. I have kept the faith of the craft, and as I walk to the door, my heart is as light and clear as the resin I have just refined, ready to rest and return to the work that defines my very existence. The morning air has turned brittle and cold. a true Florentine winter, clawing at the thick stone walls of the studio. I enter the room to find it held in a state of suspended animation, the chill preserved behind the velvet curtains like a relic. I ignite the small brazier in the corner, the charcoal crackling to life with a soft, persistent pop and hiss that marks the beginning of the day's rhythm. Today is a day for Earth, for the heavy iron-rich hematite that produces the deep burnt red tones essential for the shadows and the foundations of the figures. This stone is hard, unforgiving, and requires the full weight of my body to grind into submission. I drape my heavier apron over my tunic, testing the tension in my shoulders. I am ready. As I place the dark, jagged hematite on the marble, the stone makes a heavy, dull thud, announcing its presence. I bring the glass muller down, and the sound of the first grind is harsh, a gritty, rasping friction that vibrates through the entire table and up into my teeth. It is the sound of the earth being broken, of deep mineral foundations being laid bare. I lose myself in the exertion. This is not the delicate, subtle work of the varnish or the light-sensitive work of the lead white. This is pure physical, tectonic labor. I lean over the slab, my breath coming in short, focused bursts, my hands moving in those familiar, endless circles. The friction produces a warmth that counters the winter chill in the room, and I find a perverse, deep-seated joy in the resistance of the stone. I am not just working, I am wrestling with the raw potential of the physical world. I think about the figures that will stand upon this pigment. They will be grounded, solid, and real, cast in the shadow of this very stone I am pulverizing. I am giving them their weight, their density, their presence. The hours bleed together, marked only by the shifting light of the fire in the brazier and the rhythmic, percussive sound of my work. I feel the blood pumping through my veins, a hot, driving pulse that matches the steady, unwavering grr of the muller. My mind is clear, stripped of the clutter of the city, the demands of the guild, and the anxieties of the future. There is only the slab, the stone, and the persistence of the motion. I am the apprentice, the silent, tireless engine of the workshop, and I find a profound muscular peace in this toil. I realize that I have come to value this exhaustion more than any praise or recognition. It is an honest, earned state of being. When the stone finally yields, becoming a fine, deep red dust that clings to the marble like oxidized iron, I pause to take a breath, my hands shaking slightly from the strain. The color is stunning, a rich, dark, and incredibly stable red that feels as old as the world itself. I add the oil slowly, feeling the change in consistency as the powder drinks the liquid, transforming from a dry, abrasive grit into a thick, luxurious paste that has the color of dried blood and the weight of certainty. I have crafted the shadow of the masterpiece. I have created the darkness that will define the light. I spend the remainder of the day cleaning the slab, my movements slowed by the depth of my fatigue, the scraper making a soft, rhythmic shh that feels like a benediction at the end of a long, heavy day. The studio is warm now, the brazier casting a glow that reaches into the furthest, darkest corners of the room, turning the jars of pigment into glowing, jewel-like vessels of potential. I sit for a moment on the bench, not moving, simply listening to the sound of my own breath and the settling of the building around me. I am a part of this structure, a part of its history, and as I walk to the door to leave, the cold air waiting outside feels not like an enemy, but like a refreshing, clarifying end to a day of profound, heavy labor. I have honored the earth today, and the earth has given me the color of shadow. And as I step into the night, I carry that darkness with me, a weight that is not a burden, but a testament to the strength I have found in the quiet, patient heart of the studio. The winter has settled deeply into the marrow of Florence, and the morning that greets me is one of stark, piercing clarity. The frost on the outside of the velvet curtains seems to seep into the very air of the studio, making the room feel like a cavern hollowed out of ice. I am slower to start today, The cold has tightened the joints of my fingers, and the marble slab is almost too frigid to touch. I light the brazier with an extra measure of care, watching the orange tongues of flame lick at the charcoal until a comforting warmth begins to radiate. Today is a day for the most ethereal of all tasks, the preparation of gold leaf and the grinding of the pigments that will be layered beneath it. To work with gold is to work with the divine light itself, and the atmosphere in the room reflects this. There is a hush that falls over the studio, a sense of holy anticipation that makes even the shuffling of my own feet sound intrusive. I approach the gold with a reverence that borders on the ascetic. I do not grind the gold, it is too precious, too malleable for the abrasive friction of the muller. But I prepare the deep, earthy red clay that will serve as the bed for the precious metal. This is the foundation of the halo, the surface that will give the gold its warmth, its depth, and its incomparable glow. I grind the bowl with a gentle, patient hand, the sound a soft, rhythmic whispering against the stone. It is a sound that demands silence from the rest of the world. As I work the clay into a fine, smooth cream, I think of the master's work, the icons, the saints, the angels, and how they depend on this specific, invisible preparation to achieve their ethereal brilliance. If the bowl is not perfectly smooth, if there is even the tiniest speck of grit, the gold will fail, it will crack, it will dull. My work is the guarantee of the divine shine. The responsibility is immense, and yet it is precisely this weight that gives me such profound grounding focus. I am an apprentice, the silent, invisible foundation upon which the beauty of the faith is built, and I would not trade this role for any other. In this quiet, I find a sense of connection that reaches far beyond the walls of this room. I feel links to the anonymous laborers of the past, the monks in their cells, the stone carvers in the cathedrals, all those who spend their lives perfecting the hidden details that make the public glory possible. I am one of them. We are the keepers of the unseen, the guardians of the essential. I pause to watch the steam rise from the brazier, the light catching the tiny particles of clay that dance in the air like microscopic motes of earth. The studio is a sanctuary, a place where the ordinary is transformed into the extraordinary through the medium of patience. I work until my fingers are numb, my movements becoming a series of reflexive, precise adjustments that seem to happen without my conscious input. The clay is perfect. I scrape it into its vessel, the metal blade making a sound that feels like a quiet sigh of release. The gold weight folded in its parchment, a silent potential glory. The day has been one of quiet, meditative labor, a shift from the physical combat of the hematite to the spiritual precision of the bow. I feel a sense of clarity that is almost fragile, a state of mind that I am reluctant to break by leaving. I'm an apprentice in the year of our Lord 1495, and I am finding that the true essence of art is not in the grand gesture, but in the infinite patient and loving attention to the smallest detail. If you have ever felt that your own efforts go unseen or that your labor lacks purpose in the grand scheme of things, consider this. Without the unseen, there is no sin. Without the foundation, there is no glory. Please follow our journey, subscribe, and share in the story of the quiet, patient labor that sustains the beauty of our world. As I dim the brazier and prepare to step out into the frozen night, I feel as if I'm carrying a tiny piece of that golden divine warmth with me, a flicker of light that will guide me through the dark and prepare me for the wonders of tomorrow's work. The arrival of spring is not a sudden rupture of the winter silence, but a gradual melodic awakening that begins to permeate the very walls of our studio. I can feel it in the way the air holds the morning light, no longer a brittle pale gray, but a soft shimmering gold that stretches across the workshop floor with a new sense of purpose. My routine remains untouched by the shifting seasons. I still rise before the rest of the city. I still light the oil lamps with the same reverent care. and I still approach the marble slab as if it were an altar. But today, the atmosphere feels charged with a different kind of intensity. The paints are all prepared. The radiant blues, the deep hematite reds, the delicate charcoal blacks, and the luminous white all sitting in their ceramic vessels, a silent, colorful chorus waiting for the master's command. I find myself circling the room, checking the seals, ensuring that the moisture levels are perfect and that each pigment is resting in the exact environment it requires. This is the stage of the transition, the moment where my labor as an apprentice becomes the foundation for the master's labor as an artist. There is a strange, bittersweet relief in this. For so many months, these jars have been my only companions, the focus of every thought and every movement of my body. They have become extensions of my own being, and to see them finished, ready to be used, is to experience a small quiet death of the self-contained world I had built within these four walls. Yet, this is the very purpose of my existence here. I am the silent, invisible catalyst of the creative act. As I stand by the workbench, I see the master enter. He is a man of few words, a man whose entire life is focused on the unfolding of the form upon the wooden panel. He does not see the aches in my shoulders or the stains upon my apron. He sees only the potential of the materials I have provided. And that is exactly as it should be. He approaches the bench, his eyes scanning the array of jars with a sharp professional intensity. He picks up the jar of midnight blue, the one I spent so many hours perfecting, and he uncaps it, the scent of the oil and the stone rising into the air between us. He nods, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of approval, and in that moment, the entire weight of the last few months lifts from my chest. It is not praise, for we do not deal in praise here, but it is acknowledgement. It is the silent, profound recognition that the work is good. He begins to lay out his brushes, a collection of fine, delicate instruments that look almost frail compared to the heavy utilitarian tools I use. This is the shift from the world of mass and foundation to the world of nuance and spirit. I retreat to my secondary role, the observer of the process, the one who cleans, the one who prepares, the one who watches as the transformation happens. It is a humble position, but it is far from insignificant. I am the witness to the creation. I watch as he dips his brush into the blue, the movement so fluid, so intentional, that it seems to be an extension of his own nervous system. He touches the brush to the gessoed panel, and the first stroke of the painting is made. The color sings. It is deep, it is rich, and it is alive. It is the very essence of the heavens I helped to create in the heart of the workshop. I feel a surge of pride that is so intense it brings a sting to my eyes, but I keep my expression neutral, my posture still. My role is to be the steady, grounding presence in the studio, a fixture of the workshop as reliable as the marble slab itself. Throughout the day, the studio is filled with a new kind of silence, a productive, focused tension that is far different from the meditative silence of the grinding. It is the silence of intense concentration, the sound of a mind actively engaging with a vision. I move around the room like a ghost, tidying, organizing, and ensuring that every need is met before it is even expressed. I am the heartbeat of the workshop, the one who ensures that the process continues without interruption. As the afternoon wanes and the sun begins to set, casting long, dramatic shadows that play across the unfinished painting, I realize that this too is a part of the craft. The apprenticeship is not just about the grind, it's about learning to be the servant of the vision, learning to disappear so that the art can emerge. It's a lesson in humility, a lesson in patience, and a lesson in the true selfless nature of beauty. As I finally extinguish the lamps, the studio falling back into the quiet of the night, I take one last look at the panel. The blue is there, and it is beautiful. I have played my part, and I am content to let the master complete the work. I step out into the spring night, the air fresh and cool, and I feel a profound, deep-seated peace. The work is in motion, the colors are alive, and I am the one who made it possible. I walk home with a light step, the rhythm of the work still echoing in my mind, a steady, persistent, and beautiful beat that connects me to the past, the present, and the future of the art I serve. The studio has transformed into a theater of creation, where the quiet, grinding labor of the past months is now being woven into the grand tapestry of the altarpiece. Every morning I watch the master move with a renewed, almost frantic energy, his hands flying across the panel as if possessed by a vision that is faster than his physical capacity. I am his shadow, his silent assistant anticipating his needs before he even reaches for a tool. The air in the workshop is no longer stagnant with the dust of minerals. It is alive with the scent of wet paint, the faint metallic tang of the brushes, and the heavy, lingering presence of the oils. My tasks have shifted. I'm no longer the creator of the raw materials, but the guardian of the flow. I mix the shades as he demands them, adjusting the intensity of a color with a single drop of thinner, blending the tempera until it achieves the perfect buttery consistency he requires. There is a new kind of intimacy in this work, a shared language that requires no words. He taps his palette, and I am there with the brush he needs. He pauses, his gaze fixed on the panel, and I know he is searching for a nuance of light that only the lit white I ground weeks ago can provide. I step in my hand steady and offer him the exact texture he seeks. It is a dance of collaboration, a silent, profound understanding that binds us together in the service of the art. I find that I'm watching the painting with a sense of ownership that is both intense and completely selfless. When he paints the folds of the Madonna's robe using the deep, vibrant red of the madder I prepared, I feel the texture of it beneath my own fingers. When he highlights the distant rolling hills in the background with the malachite green, I see the landscape of my own memories of the Tuscan countryside. I'm in the painting not as an artist but as the soul of the materials, the one who gave them their form, their purity, and their life. The days are long, stretching far into the night under the glow of the candles, and yet I never feel the fatigue that once marked the early days of my apprenticeship. There is an exhilaration in seeing the work come to fruition, a sense of completion that pushes me forward, keeping me alert and focused. The studio has become a living organism, pulsing with the rhythm of the painting, and I am its core. I am the one who ensures that the water is clean, that the brushes are supple, and that the ambient light is perfectly controlled. I am the unsung hero of the altarpiece, and the quiet satisfaction of that truth is enough to sustain me through the hardest, longest hours. I think about the people who will eventually see this work, the worshippers, the pilgrims, the common folk of Florence who will stand before it in awe. And I wonder if they will ever realize the sheer amount of unseen, repetitive, and dedicated labor that went into every single square inch of the canvas. They will see the face of the saint. They will feel the weight of the red, and they will be lifted by the light of the white. But they will never know of the grinding, the mixing, and the years of silent devotion that made it possible. And I realize with a sudden sharp clarity that this is the essence of my calling. To be the foundation is to be the most important part of the structure, even if it is the part that is never seen. I am the silence that allows the music to be heard. I am the canvas that allows the paint to be seen. I am the apprentice who allows the master to be a genius. This realization brings a profound sense of peace. I don't need the credit and I don't need the recognition. I have the work, and the work is eternal. As the painting begins to take its final form, the colors settling into their places with a vibrant, glowing intensity, I feel a sense of profound, quiet accomplishment. The masterpiece is almost complete, the vision is manifest, and I have done my part to make it happen. As I stand in the studio, watching the master put down his brush for the final time in the evening, I take a deep, long breath, the air thick with the history we have created together. I have spent my life in this room, in this rhythm, and as the future approaches, I am ready for it, knowing that whatever comes next, I have left a part of my soul here. In the colors, in the oil, and in the eternal patient and beautiful work that will define my life forever. The final strokes have been laid, the varnish has been applied, and the studio now stands in a strange, haunting silence. The masterpiece sits in the center of the room, drying in the soft, diffuse light, its presence so overwhelming that it seems to have drained the very energy from the space. I walk around it, my movements slow and unaccustomed to this sudden cessation of labor. For months, this painting was a series of problems to be solved, a mountain of raw materials to be conquered, a frantic race against the clock. Now it is finished, it is complete. It belongs no longer to the studio, nor to the master, nor to me. It belongs to the world. I feel a hollow, echoing void in my chest, a sensation that is not grief, but the sudden absence of a defining purpose. My hands, still permanently stained with the traces of malachite and madder, feel strangely useless, hanging at my sides without the weight of the muller or the guidance of the palette knife. I am an apprentice who has finished his masterpiece, yet I am still just an apprentice. The master has already turned his attention to new commissions, new contracts, and new sketches. He is a man who lives in the future, while I am a man who has lived entirely in the present of this painting. I sit on the workbench, the wood cold and smooth beneath me, and I look at the work one last time. It is a stunning, breathtaking, and deeply moving image. The blue of the heavens is as deep as the sea. The red of the robes is as rich as the lifeblood of the saints, and the light, that brilliant, ethereal, lead white light seems to actually emanate from the panel, casting its own internal glow into the dim studio. It is a perfect realization of a vision, a moment of divine grace captured in oil and tempera. I have done my part. I have ensured that the materials were pure, that the colors were vibrant, and that the foundation was solid. And yet, looking at it now, I feel a profound sense of detachment. The art is the thing, not the maker, not the helper, not the toil. I realize that this is the final hardest lesson of the apprenticeship, to learn to let go, to pour everything you are into something and then to step aside, to become a shadow again, to return to the silence. It is a kind of death, a necessary dissolution of the ego that must occur before one can truly begin to understand the nature of creation. I stand up and walk to the shelves where my pigments once lived. They are mostly gone. The jars emptied, the marble slab scoured clean and left ready for the next person, the next master, the next dream. The studio is a blank canvas once again. I'm not sad. I feel a sudden, surprising lightness, as if the burden I had been carrying has been lifted, leaving me clear, empty, and ready. The rhythm of the work, that steady, hypnotic pulse of the grinding, is still with me, a ghost in my mind. But it is no longer a command. It is a memory. I am a different person than the one who entered this studio so many months ago. I have been forged in the fire of the grind, tempered by the patience of the mixing, and hardened by the discipline of the apprenticeship. I'm ready for whatever comes next, whether it is the start of my own journey, the continuation of my service here, or the beginning of an entirely new life in a world that no longer feels like a distant, chaotic mystery, but a place that I understand, a place that I have helped to make more beautiful. I take one last look around the room at the familiar shadows, the stained floor and the faint, sweet and metallic scent of the craft that has been my life, and I feel a profound, deep-seated sense of gratitude. I have lived, I have worked, I have served the beauty, and that is enough. I push the door open, the light of the morning sun hitting my face with a warmth that feels like a benediction, and I step out into the streets of Florence, my heart light, my mind clear, and my hands, though scarred and stained, ready to grasp the future with a strength that was born in the silence and the dust of the sanctuary. The work is finished, but the journey of the artist, the journey of the apprentice, The journey of the seeker of beauty has only just begun. I walk into the bustle of the city, no longer a ghost, but a man who knows the value of the silence, the power of the patience, and the infinite enduring beauty of the light. The city of Florence awakens with a roar of commerce and prayer, a stark contrast to the reverent silence I have inhabited for so long. I walk along the narrow cobblestone streets, the sound of my own footsteps muffled by the rising chorus of market vendors, the clatter of carts, and the distant tolling of the bells from the Duomo. For the first time in years, the world outside the studio feels not like a chaotic alien landscape, but like a place I might actually belong to. I am no longer the apprentice hiding in the shadow of a master. I am a man who has walked through the fire of dedication and emerged on the other side. My hands, once constantly busy with the muller and the marble, now hang idle, and this stillness feels strange, a vacuum where there was once a constant, productive friction. I find myself observing the architecture of the city with a new professional eye. I see the layers of paint on the facades of the buildings, the way the light catches the rough, hand-hewn stone of the palazzos, and I find myself instinctively calculating the pigments, the binders, and the labor that must have gone into the details. The world is a canvas, and I have become a critic of its construction. I realized that the apprenticeship did not just teach me how to make paint, it taught me how to see the underlying architecture of beauty. I reached the Ponte Vecchio, the air thick with the scent of the river and the brine of the nearby tanneries, and I leaned against the stone railing, watching the Arno flow sluggishly beneath me. It is a river of time, carrying the detritus of the city toward the sea, a perfect metaphor for the transient nature of the labor I have just completed. The altarpiece is already destined for its home in the church, where it will be viewed by thousands. Yet here I am, watching the water. The detachment I felt in the studio has grown into a broader perspective. The painting is a fixed point, a moment of captured divinity, but life is the flowing water. Both are necessary. I think back to the master, and I wonder if he ever feels this same peculiar emptiness once a work is finished. Does he feel the same loss of the identity that was tied to the project? Or has he already built a new one in the sketches for the next commission? I suspect that the true artist is a shapeshifter, someone who can inhabit a project completely and then shed it like a skin. I'm beginning to understand that I must learn this too. I cannot remain the apprentice forever. I must eventually become the master of my own process. The prospect is both terrifying and exhilarating. I have the technical skills, the discipline, and the profound internalized knowledge of the craft. But do I have the vision? Can I see a world that does not yet exist and possess the willpower to bring it into being? I look at my hands again, stained, calloused, and strong. They have served the vision of another for a long time, but they are capable of holding a brush of my own. I have spent my life preparing the materials for greatness. Perhaps it is time I learn how to create the greatness itself. I walk away from the river, my path now clear, though its destination is still hidden in the mist of the future. I find myself drawn to the workshop of an acquaintance, a fellow artisan, a carver of wood whose studio is a chaotic sawdust-filled space that smells of cedar and pine. He greets me with a gruff, warm nod, his face lined with the deep, expressive wrinkles of a man who has spent his life wrestling with the grain of oak. He doesn't ask about the master's painting or the politics of the guild. He simply offers me a chisel and a block of wood. It is a simple, primal gesture, a recognition of the craft that binds us together. I take the tool. It feels heavy, balanced, and alive in my hand. I press it to the wood, the edge biting into the surface with a clean, resistance-free glide that sends a jolt of pure physical pleasure through my arm. It is not a grind, but it is a process, a systematic, patient, and dedicated removal of the unnecessary to reveal the form within. I have found my way back to the rhythm, and for the first time the rhythm is mine. I spend hours in his shop, losing myself in the scent of the timber and the sound of the steel against the grain. I am not an apprentice today, I am a maker. The world outside continues its frantic, noisy existence. But here, in the sanctuary of the wood, I am at peace. I am learning that the apprenticeship is not a prison, but a ladder, and I have finally stepped onto the next rung. As the day fades and the shop begins to darken, I realize that I have not thought of the altarpiece once in these hours. I have been entirely, completely, and blissfully present in the act of carving. This is the new life I have been waiting for. A life where the labor is not just a service to another's vision, but an exploration of my own potential. I leave the shop as the stars begin to prick through the velvet darkness above the city, and I walk back toward my room with a renewed, unshakable sense of purpose. The city is no longer a mystery, it is a workshop, and I am no longer a ghost. I am an artisan. I have the foundation, I have the discipline, and now I have the freedom to build. The night is full of shadows and possibilities, and I am ready to step into them, knowing that whatever I create, it will be marked by the patience, the focus, and the deep, abiding love of the craft that has defined every moment of my life until this point. The apprenticeship is over, but the work, the beautiful, patient, and eternal work, is only just beginning. The transition from the role of the apprentice to that of the artisan is not a sudden epiphany, but a subtle shifting tide in the landscape of my daily life. In the weeks that follow, I find myself lingering in the woodcarver studio, the scent of cedar and pine becoming the new perfume of my existence. My hands, once stained with the minerals of the painter's palette, are now dusted with the golden, fragrant shavings of linden and oak. There is a different kind of resistance here. While the marble slab demanded a rhythmic, circular submission, the wood demands a dialogue. To carve is to understand the soul of the tree, the way the grain runs, the stubborn knots that dictate the limits of the form, and the way the blade must follow the hidden history of the timber. I'm learning that every piece of wood carries its own temperament, and to impose my will upon it without listening is to invite disaster. It is a lesson in humility, echoing the lessons of the studio, yet it feels entirely mine. I am no longer merely executing a master's order. I am observing, interpreting, and responding to the material as a peer. There are days when I feel the weight of the past pressing upon me, the phantom muscle memory of the molar still twitching in my fingers. I find myself standing still in the middle of the shop, the chisel frozen in my hand as the old rhythm, the grr of the stone, the scent of the linseed oil, the heavy expectant silence of the workshop washes over me. It is not an unpleasant sensation, but a reminder of the bedrock upon which my current skills are built. I am the man I am today because I spent those years in the shadows perfecting the foundations for someone else's glory. That discipline, that obsession with purity and perfection is the invisible skeleton of every statue I carve now. It is the secret power that separates my work from that of the casual amateur. I noticed that the woodcarver, an older man named Alessandro, whose eyes are like weathered flint, watches me with a quiet, perceptive intensity. He says little, but when he does speak, his words are like the strike of a well-sharpened tool, precise, effective, and transformative. You carve like a man who has already seen the finished form in his sleep. He remarked the other day, his voice a gravelly rumble. You don't fight the wood. You release the spirit that's trapped inside. I had no answer for him, for he hit upon a truth I hadn't yet been able to articulate to myself. My time as an apprentice was not just about serving a master, it was about internalizing the very nature of creation. I had spent years watching the master painter manifest the unseen, and now my hands are merely fulfilling the echo of that long observed process. The city of Florence itself has begun to look different. It is no longer just a collection of buildings and streets, but a layered, living history of human ambition and effort. I see the work of the stonemasons in the cathedral, the meticulous back-breaking labor of the metalworkers in the guild quarter, and the delicate, precise movements of the weavers in the markets. I recognize the struggle in each of them. I see the apprentices, the hidden workers, the silent pillars who hold up the grand facade of our civilization, and I feel a kinship with them that transcends language. We are the ones who make the world tangible. We are the ones who turn the raw, chaotic stuff of the earth into the ordered, beautiful, and enduring reality of our culture. As spring gives way to the heat of early summer, the shop becomes a sweltering furnace of activity. I find myself working longer hours, the physical exhaustion a balm to my restless spirit. I have started my own project, a small intricate panel depicting the flight of birds, an attempt to capture the fluidity of motion in the solid, unyielding medium of walnut. It is a daunting challenge, one that forces me to push the boundaries of my skill. I have failed repeatedly. I have splintered the wood. I have miscalculated the depth, and I have had to start over more times than I care to admit. Yet there is no frustration here, only curiosity, only the drive to understand, to refine, and to eventually succeed. This is the freedom I never had in the studio, the freedom to fail, to experiment, and to learn through the raw, unadorned truth of my own mistakes. My room, which was once a place of retreat and isolation, has become a place of planning and reflection. I sketch designs in the light of my single candle, the charcoal marks on the rough parchment appearing almost like ghosts in the dark. I'm building a future that I cannot yet fully see, but I feel the weight of it, the gravity of it, pulling me forward. I'm no longer waiting for the morning to be told what to do. I'm waking up with a hunger to see what I can do next. The city of Florence may be a place of intrigue, of politics, and of fleeting fortunes, but for me it is the cradle of the possible. I have learned the value of the silence, the power of the patience, and the infinite beauty of the light. And now, I am ready to use them to carve my own name, not into stone, but into the very texture of my own life. As the moon rises over the Arno, casting a silver path that seems to lead out of the city, I sit by my window and realize that I am finally, truly home. I am the maker, the seeker, and the artist and the work. The beautiful, patient, and eternal work has only just begun. The summer heat hangs heavy over Florence, a humid, stifling blanket that turns the narrow streets into chimneys of trapped air and dust. Inside the woodcarver's workshop, the temperature is intense, the air thick with the sharp, sweet smell of fresh resin and the persistent, fine grit of sawdust that settles on every surface. I have shed my heavy tunic, working in only a linen shirt that clings to my skin, my muscles slick with sweat. The work, however, is cool. There is a strange paradoxical relief in the motion of the chisel, a rhythmic, cooling precision that acts as an antidote to the sweltering world outside. My hands are now mapped with the geography of my new craft. Small nicks from the blade, calluses that have hardened and then softened again, and a permanent faint patina of wood dust that seems to live in the very pores of my skin. I find myself lost in the carving of the bird's wing, trying to capture that impossible fleeting moment of suspension in the air. The walnut is hard, unforgiving, and requires a steady, nuanced touch that borders on the surgical. Each sliver of wood I remove feels like a decision, a choice between the form I envision and the brute reality of the timber. Alessandro watches me from the corner, his own work long abandoned for the day, his pipe smoke curling into the rafters in slow hypnotic spirals. He doesn't speak, and for that I am grateful. There is a language to our silence that feels more profound than any conversation we could have. We are two men at different ends of the same path, sharing the common sacred duty of creation. I think about the master in the studio, and I wonder what he would think of this shift from the fluid, ethereal world of pigment to the grounded, structural world of wood. He was a man of light and atmosphere. I am becoming a man of weight and substance. It is a different kind of alchemy, but the core essence is identical. It is the struggle to pull an idea out of the void and anchor it into the physical world. I have begun to understand that the medium is merely the vehicle. The true craft is the discipline of the mind. That is what the apprenticeship truly taught me, not how to grind stone, but how to master the erratic, impatient impulses of my own soul. It taught me how to wait, how to observe, and how to accept that beauty is rarely a flash of inspiration, but rather the result of 1,000 quiet, deliberate steps. As the sun begins its slow orange descent, casting long dramatic fingers of light across the workshop floor, I stop for a moment to rest. My body aches with a deep, satisfying exhaustion that speaks of progress, of actual physical change. I look down at the bird's wing. It is starting to emerge, the curve of the primary feathers beginning to suggest flight, the subtle undulating surface catching the light in a way that feels almost magically alive. I am struck by a sudden overwhelming wave of gratitude. I realize that I am no longer just a laborer, no longer just a gear in the machine of the master's vision. I am the driver of my own intent. I have spent my life in the service of the unseen, and now I am making it seen. The responsibility of this is immense, but it no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a key, unlocking a door I didn't even know was shut. I wipe the sweat from my brow, the movement slow and deliberate, and I take a long, cool drink of water from the ceramic jug. The shop is quiet, the city outside the door a distant muted hum that no longer intrudes upon my peace. I am where I need to be, doing what I need to do, and that I realize is the definition of a life well lived. I pick up the chisel again, the steel cool and firm in my grip. I know exactly where the next cut must be, where the next sliver of wood needs to fall to reveal the hidden arc of the wing. I am the apprentice of no one, and yet I am the student of everything. The light is fading fast now, the shadows swallowing the corners of the room. But I don't need the light to see what I'm doing. I can feel it. The grain, the resistance, the tension. It is all known to me, felt in the very tips of my fingers. I am in the flow, that rare elusive state where the worker and the work become one. The evening bells begin to ring from the distance, a somber rhythmic tolling that marks the end of the day, but I am in no hurry to finish. The night is a gift, a private velvet space where the work can continue, shielded from the demands of the world. I'm carving the flight of a bird in a room full of dust and heat. And for this moment in this city of stone and secrets, I am the only person who truly matters. The apprenticeship is a memory. The masterpiece is a legacy. But this struggle with the wood, this search for the form, is my life, and I am embracing it with every fiber of my being. The birds, the wood, the light, the shadow. It is all coming together, a symphony of purpose that resonates in the very bones of my body. Tomorrow will come, and with it, the demands of the guild, the expectations of the public, and the endless churning, beautiful machinery of Florence. But tonight, there is only the wood. And the wood, in its silent, patient, and enduring way, is teaching me the most important lesson of all, that nothing, not even the smallest, most insignificant piece of work, is ever truly finished. It is only released, and I am finally ready to release mine. The heat has finally broken, replaced by a sudden violent thunderstorm that swept over Florence, washing the streets clean and leaving the air cool and charged with ozone. I stand in the doorway of the workshop, watching the gutters overflow with the runoff of 1,000 rooftops. The city transformed into a shimmering, reflective landscape of dark stone and silver water. It is a cleansing moment, a symbolic shift that seems to mirror the state of my own mind. The bird's wing is finished, well, as finished as anything can be, when one is constantly learning. It sits on my workbench, a piece of walnut that has been transformed from a solid block of timber into a delicate captured moment of motion. I have spent the last few days polishing it, refining the surface until it feels like silk beneath my fingertips. The detail is obsessive. Every feather, every curve, every subtle shift in the grain has been attended to with the same exacting precision I once brought to the grinding of pigments. I have realized that the obsession was never really about the paint or the wood. It was about the standard. I hold myself to a standard that exists beyond the expectations of any master or client. It is a standard of absolute, uncompromising integrity. The apprentice in me is still there, living in the foundation of my character, ensuring that I never take the easy path or settle for the good enough. I pick up the carving, feeling its weight. It is lighter than it should be, a testament to how much material I have removed, how much of the excess has been surrendered. It feels like holding a piece of my own soul. Alessandro walks up behind me, his footsteps silent on the damp floorboards. He looks at the carving for a long time, his face unreadable, his pipe clutched between his teeth. He takes it from my hands, turning it over in the dim fading light, feeling the balance, the finish, the lines. He doesn't say a word for a long time, and the suspense is a physical thing in the room. Finally, he looks up at me, a slow, rare smile breaking through the weather map of his face. You've stopped fighting it, he says, his voice a soft, gravelly rasp. You've learned to listen to what the wood wants to be, rather than telling it what you want it to be. That is the moment the craftsman becomes the artist. Those words hit me with the weight of a physical blow, a sudden piercing clarity that makes the air seem to vibrate. I have spent years as a servant, years as a witness, and now I am being recognized as a creator. It isn't the title that matters, but the shift in my own identity. I am no longer waiting for permission to exist. I am asserting my place in the world. We stand there in the darkening shop, two men connected by the simple, profound act of shaping the world with our hands. And I feel a sense of belonging that is deeper than anything I have ever experienced. I am not an outsider in Florence. I am a vital, contributing part of its heartbeat. The thunderstorm fades into a steady, rhythmic rain, and the city begins to settle into the night. The distant sounds of the taverns and the chatter of the markets softening into a gentle domestic quiet. I leave the shop, the carving carefully wrapped in a piece of soft leather, and I walk home through the wet, glistening streets. The reflection of the lanterns in the puddles dances like shattered gold, and I feel as if I am walking through a city built of light and memory. I am no longer the apprentice, but I am still the student. I have realized that the journey is infinite. Every piece I finish will only lead me to the next question, the next challenge, the next beautiful, impossible form waiting to be released from the material. The life of an artisan is not a destination, but a state of perpetual, evolving becoming. I reach my room and place the carving on the table, the soft light of my candle revealing the delicate lines of the wing. It looks different here, away from the clutter of the workshop, simpler and more profound. Here's a record of my struggle, a testament to my patience, and a promise of what is yet to come. I sit by the window, the cool air of the night brushing against my skin, and I think of the altarpiece, the master, the thousands of hours spent in the shadows, and the long winding path that led me here. I have no regrets. Every moment was necessary. Every bit of dust, every aching muscle, every hour of silent, repetitive labor was a layer in the foundation of who I am today. I am ready for the future, not because I know what it holds, but because I know that I have the tools to shape it. The city of Florence is a place of grand ambitions, of soaring cathedrals and powerful families, but it is also a place built by the hands of thousands of people like me. People who show up, who work, who strive for excellence in the unseen corners of the world. I am one of them, and that is a source of pride that will never fade. The rain continues to fall, a steady, soothing pulse that echoes the rhythm of my own heart, and as I blow out the candle, plunging the room into the velvet safety of the dark, I know that tomorrow will be another day of creation. I am no longer the apprentice of a single man, but the apprentice of the world, and I am learning step by step how to read the language of the beauty that is hidden in every surface, every shadow, and every breath of this my existence. The dawn that follows the storm is crisp, the air washed clean and smelling of wet stone and wild distant mountains. I find myself standing on the threshold of my room, hesitating for a heartbeat before stepping out into the vibrant waking life of Florence. The wood carving, that small, delicate fragment of light, sits on my table, a quiet testament to the shift that has occurred within me. I am no longer just a spectator of my own life. I am an architect of it. My path leads me back toward the workshop, but the route feels different today. I walk with a purpose that is less about arriving and more about the deliberate, measured cadence of a man who knows the value of every step. The city is beginning its daily ritual, the slamming of wooden shutters, the rattle of iron-rimmed wheels on the uneven stones, the rhythmic cries of the vendors pushing their carts. It is the music of a living, breathing urban heart, a complex orchestration of survival and ambition that I once found overwhelming, but now it feels like the steady, constant beat of my own rhythm. I have integrated the lessons of the studio into the fabric of my character. I understand now that excellence is not a state of being, but a relentless daily process of refinement. As I reach the workshop, I find the door already unlatched, the familiar scent of sawdust and resin spilling out into the morning chill. Alessandro is there, hunched over a large block of olive wood, his chisel moving with a deliberate, slow grace that speaks of decades of communion with his medium. He doesn't look up as I enter, but he offers a nod, a silent invitation to take my place at the secondary bench. I do not rush to my own tools. Instead, I take a moment to stand in the center of the room, letting the atmosphere settle into my bones. The silence of the workshop is not empty. It is a pressurized space, filled with the potential of the wood and the cumulative weight of our shared concentration. I begin to work on a new project, a series of decorative panels for a private patron, pieces that require not just precision, but a degree of imaginative flair that tests my ability to synthesize form and ornamentation. The wood is dense and stubborn, olive wood being notoriously difficult to tame, but I find myself welcoming the challenge. My hands move with a confidence that was absent only a few short weeks ago. I have learned to anticipate the grain's stubbornness, to read the resistance of the wood before the blade even makes contact. I am no longer fighting the material, I am facilitating its transformation. The hours pass, the sun climbing high above the rooftops, and the studio settles into that familiar deep state of productive flow. My thoughts, once prone to wandering toward the anxieties of the future or the ghosts of the past, are now anchored firmly in the present moment. I am aware of the temperature of the room, the quality of the light, the specific tension in my shoulders, and the way the steel sinks as it cuts into the fiber. It is a state of complete, unadulterated focus, a meditative trance that is both exhausting and incredibly restorative. I have realized that the apprenticeship was not about reaching a destination, it was about internalizing a process. I am now the master of my own process, and that is a realization that carries its own kind of gravity. As the afternoon deepens, I take a break to sit outside in the narrow alleyway, eating a piece of bread and hard cheese, watching the life of the city unfold before me. I see a young boy, perhaps not more than 10, staring into a metalworker's shop with the same hungry, wide-eyed intensity I once had when I first approached the studio. He is captivated by the sparks, by the rhythmic strike of the hammer, by the transformation of the dull iron into a blade. I feel a sudden sharp pang of recognition. I was that boy, and in that moment I realized that I have a responsibility. The chain of knowledge, of craft, of dedication does not end with me. It must be passed on. I am no longer just an artisan. I am a link in a much larger historical process. The thought does not feel heavy. Instead, it gives me a sense of stability, a firm footing in the unpredictable river of time. When I return to the shop, I work with a new layer of intent. I'm not just carving wood, I am practicing for the day when I will have my own student, my own apprentice to guide, to teach, and to challenge. The realization imbues every stroke of the chisel with a heightened significance. I want my work to be exemplary, not for the sake of the client, but for the sake of the craft itself. I am building a legacy of discipline, one cut at a time. The sun begins to set, the light in the workshop shifting into a warm amber glow that makes the dust motes dance in the air like microscopic stars. I continue working long after the shadows have claimed the corners of the shop, the rhythmic sound of the steel against the wood providing a comforting, hypnotic soundtrack to the end of the day. I'm tired, my body humming with the low-grade pleasant ache of physical exertion, but my spirit is high. I have found my rhythm, I have found my home, and most importantly, I have found the strength to keep going, to keep carving, and to keep striving for beauty that is as enduring as the wood itself. The city of Florence continues its nightly transformation, the sounds of the day softening into the whispers of the evening. And as I finally set down my tools, I feel a sense of profound, quiet accomplishment. I have honored the work, I have honored the day. And as I walk out into the cooling air of the night, I carry with me the silent, patient, and beautiful knowledge that I am exactly where I am meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The journey is long, the work is never finished, but I am ready. I have the foundation, I have the passion, and I have the steady beating heart of an artist who knows that the true magic lies not in the final product, but in the unwavering daily pursuit of the ideal. The transition into late summer brings a stillness to Florence that feels almost sacred. The air is heavy with the scent of sun-warmed stone and the faint sweet decay of overripe fruit from the nearby markets. In the workshop, the intensity of my focus has evolved. It is no longer the frantic, nervous energy of the apprentice desperate to prove his worth, nor is it the quiet, cautious observation of the beginner. It has become a steady, humming resonance, a deep-seated confidence that guides my hands without the need for conscious spoken thought. I'm carving a large panel now, a complex, sprawling landscape of interlaced vines and hidden flora that requires a level of patience I could never have summoned in my youth. Each tendril must be undercut to give the illusion of depth. Each leaf must be textured with the minute, careful strokes that mimic the vein work of nature itself. It is a grueling, repetitive, and deeply rewarding process that consumes the better part of my waking hours. Alessandro often stops by my bench to watch, his presence a quiet, approving shadow in the corner of the room. He says little, but when he occasionally points to a section of my work and offers a brief clipped comment, a suggestion about the angle of the relief or the depth of a shadow, his words are golden. They are the keys that unlock new possibilities in my own thinking. I have learned to appreciate the value of critique, to see it not as a judgment of my worth, but as an essential tool for the refinement of the craft. My room, once a Spartan, lonely cell, has become a place of intellectual and artistic expansion. My sketches are no longer just practice. They are designs for projects that exist in my mind, waiting for the right piece of timber to manifest. I find myself reading whatever I can find, studying the geometry of the cathedral, the proportions of the ancient statues in the piazza, and the intricate mathematical grace of the botanical drawings circulating among the guild. I am building a foundation of knowledge that extends far beyond the workshop. I am becoming a man who understands that art is not just a manual skill, it is a synthesis of geometry, philosophy, history, and observation. The isolation of the apprenticeship has been replaced by an expansive, curious engagement with the world. I walk the city streets with a sense of connection, seeing the interplay of shadow and light, the structural integrity of the bridges, and the human drama of the marketplaces as a series of compositions waiting to be interpreted. This shift in perspective has fundamentally altered my relationship with Florence. It is no longer just a backdrop for my work, it is the source of my inspiration. One evening, as the bells of the city ring out for vespers, I find myself standing on the banks of the Arno, watching the water mirror the deep, bruised colors of the twilight sky. The reflection of the bridge, with its solid repeating arches, seems to vibrate against the surface of the river. I think of the master's altarpiece, the one I helped to birth in that cold, drafty studio so many months ago. It is installed now, a centerpiece in the chapel, seen by the faithful who come seeking solace or redemption. I wonder if they ever think of the pigments, the wood, the labor, the cold, or the long quiet nights of grinding. Probably not, and that is exactly how it should be. The work is meant to transcend its makers, to exist in a state of grace that separates it from the human struggle that brought it into being. I feel a sense of immense quiet pride in knowing that I have played a role in creating something that is designed to endure. I am a part of a long, unbroken tradition of creators who have dedicated their lives to the manifestation of beauty. I walk home in the gathering dark, the city lights beginning to flicker to life like embers in the hearth. My body is tired. My muscles hum with the familiar dull ache of a day spent in service to the craft. But my mind is alight with ideas. I am thinking about the next carving, about the way I will treat the light on the bark of the trees, about the composition of the scene, and about the sheer undeniable joy of the process. I am no longer afraid of the future. I am no longer waiting for life to happen to me. I am the one who is happening. The discipline I cultivated in the silence of the apprenticeship has become the engine of my creative life. I am a craftsman, a thinker, and a seeker. And as I sit by my window to sketch the first outlines of my next project, I feel a profound, deep-seated peace that is rooted in the knowledge that I am finally, truly, and completely free. The work is infinite. The learning is endless, and I am the willing, devoted servant of the beauty that is waiting to be found in the grain of the wood, the depth of the shadow, and the patient, unwavering focus of my own steady hand. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, the bells will toll, and I will be back at the bench, ready to begin again. The cycle is perfect, and I am grateful for every turn of the wheel. The transition into the harvest season has brought a change in the air, a crispness that bites at the edges of the day and demands a shift in the tempo of my labor. In the workshop, the heat of summer has faded, leaving behind a workspace that feels cooler, more grounded, and infinitely more conducive to the deep, sustained concentration I now require for my larger commissions. I am currently working on a relief panel that captures the spirit of the Tuscan hills, a project that is as much about understanding the texture of the earth as it is about the geometry of form. My hands have developed a kind of intelligence, a tactile memory that allows me to navigate the knots and grains of the wood with an almost subconscious ease. It is a state of grace I have worked years to achieve, a seamless integration of thought, intention, and physical action. Alessandro is occupied with his own work, a masterwork of intricate cabinetry for a merchant prince, and our shared silence is punctuated only by the rhythmic, steady rasp of our steel tools. We have moved beyond the need for conversation, our rapport existing in the shared space of the workshop, where every sound, the drop of a wood shaving, the scrape of a chisel, the sudden sharp pop of a hidden knot giving way, is a piece of a larger unspoken dialogue. My mind, however, is not confined to the workshop. As I work, my thoughts drift toward the broader implications of my craft. I have begun to realize that my apprenticeship was not just a training in manual skills, but a rigorous, lifelong initiation into the philosophy of the human experience. To carve, to paint, to build, to create. These are all ways of asserting our existence against the inevitable grinding passage of time. They are acts of defiance, small and beautiful rebellions against the void. Every mark I leave on the wood is a testament that I was here, that I thought, that I felt, and that I strove for something beyond the mundane realities of survival. This realization has fundamentally shifted my perspective on the city of Florence. It is no longer just a bustling, chaotic, and sometimes dangerous urban space. It is a monument to human effort, a living, breathing synthesis of the struggle to transcend our limitations. I see the cathedral, the bridges, the palatos, and the small hidden shrines tucked into the corners of the alleys, not just as architectural feats, but as manifestations of a profound collective ambition. We are all makers here, each in our own way contributing to the grand, ongoing construction of our shared reality. The evenings are becoming longer, the light fading into a rich, golden twilight that spills across my workbench and illuminates the intricate, swirling patterns of the landscape I'm carving. I find that I am increasingly protective of this time. It is my own, a private, sanctified space where the world outside, the politics, the rumors of war, the petty grievances of the guild simply ceases to exist. I am fully, utterly immersed in the present, a state of being that I once found elusive but now reach for with the familiarity of a practiced habit. I am learning that the quality of one's life is directly proportional to the quality of one's attention. By focusing my energy on the small, manageable slivers of wood, I am actually exerting control over the vast, unwieldy tapestry of my own destiny. There is a deep, abiding comfort in this realization. I have stopped worrying about whether I will ever be a great artist in the eyes of history. That is a distraction, a phantom that leads the mind away from the honest, grueling, and deeply satisfying labor of the daily grind. I am content to be a good artisan, to serve the craft with integrity, and to continue the process of refinement until the day I can no longer pick up a tool. That is the only measure of success that truly matters. As the autumn nights grow longer, I find myself spending more time in the quiet, reflective darkness of my room, reviewing the sketches of the day and planning for the work of the morrow. I am currently drafting a design for a series of panels that will explore the passage of the seasons, a project that will require not just technical skill but a deepening understanding of the natural world. I am planning to spend time in the fields beyond the city walls to observe the way the light changes as the sun dips below the horizon, to study the way the trees shed their leaves, and to capture the subtle fleeting shifts in the landscape that most people simply pass by. I'm becoming a student of the world itself, and the workshop is merely the laboratory where I attempt to distill my observations into something tangible, something that can be touched and felt by another person. The cycle is complete, yet it is also beginning again on a higher, more complex plane. I am no longer the apprentice of a master, but the apprentice of the earth, of the seasons, and of the fundamental, enduring mystery of existence. As I look out my window at the silver crescent moon hanging over the rooftops of Florence, I feel a sense of profound, quiet belonging. I am a part of the city. I am a part of the history, and I am a part of the beauty that is being built day by day by the countless dedicated hands that work in the silence of the shops. My life is a work in progress, a slow, deliberate carving of my own soul, and I am ready for the challenges that lie ahead. The night is cool, the silence is absolute, and I am content to wait for the morning, for the work and for the next, inevitable and beautiful lesson that the day will surely bring. My life, my craft, and my soul are finally in alignment. And as I close my eyes to sleep, I am filled with a calm, unwavering, and joyful anticipation of what is yet to be realized, knowing that every breath I take is a part of the enduring patient and beautiful work that will define my legacy long after I am gone. The autumn has finally settled into its deep, melancholy stride, with the morning's cloaked in a thick, silver-gray mist that rolls off the Arno and clings to the stone facades of Florence. Inside the workshop, the air is crisp, carrying the sharp, lingering perfume of damp wood and the faint, earthy scent of wood polish. I have reached a turning point in my latest commission, the series of panels depicting the passage of the seasons. The relief of the autumn harvest with its intricate sheaves of wheat and the delicate, drooping heads of late blooming flowers has become a mirror for my own state of mind. I find that I'm carving not just the harvest, but the act of gathering, of bringing in what has been grown and prepared over the long, labor intensive months of the year. My movements have slowed, becoming more deliberate, as if I am trying to savor the resistance of the walnut, the way the wood yields with a soft, persistent sigh beneath the edge of the gouge. Alessandro, watching from his own bench, has become a silent mentor. His presence a steadying force in my life. He often stops to inspect my progress, running his callous fingers over the smooth surfaces of the leaves and stems, his silence more expressive than any praise. He knows, as I am coming to know, that the true value of a work lies in the devotion that fuels its creation, not in the final aesthetic result. This realization has fundamentally shifted my priorities. I am no longer concerned with the opinion of the guild or the praise of a patron. I am solely focused on the integrity of the process. I have started to spend my evenings not in study but in active sensory observation of the world outside the city walls. I take long, quiet walks through the hills of Fiesole, watching the way the light filters through the thinning canopy of the chestnut trees, the way the shadows lengthen and pool in the valleys, and the way the world seems to hold its breath in anticipation of the coming winter. I am recording these impressions in my mind, a mental sketchbook that informs every cut I make the next day. The work is no longer an imitation of nature. It is a synthesis of my own lived experience of the natural world. This, I realize, is the ultimate goal of the artisan, to transcend the craft until it becomes a form of communication, a bridge between the inner life of the maker and the outer reality of the viewer. The days seem to accelerate, the light failing earlier each evening, forcing me to rely more and more on the focused, artificial glow of the oil lamps. The workshop takes on a new intimate atmosphere in these hours, the dancing shadows and the scent of burning oil, creating a space that feels detached from the outside world. It is in this environment that I have found a profound, almost spiritual focus. The petty intrigues of the city, the changing political tides of the Florentine Republic, the news of distant conflicts, all of it fades into the background, rendered insignificant by the tactile, immediate, and utterly absorbing reality of the carving. I am learning that peace is not an absence of noise, but a presence of purpose. My room has become a sanctuary of simplicity, stripped of everything that does not contribute to my craft. I spend hours in the dark, contemplating the day's progress, the successes and the failures, the moments of clarity and the times of frustration. I am dissecting my own process, trying to understand not just what I did, but why I did it and how I can do it better. I am my own most demanding master, and that is a discipline that is as exhausting as it is essential. The city of Florence, with all its grand marble-clad ambition, has begun to seem like a vast, complex machine that I am finally learning to navigate. I see the people, the power, and the art with a new sense of detachment, recognizing the fragile, often desperate human effort that underlies all of it. I am no longer just a part of the machine. I am an observer, a recorder, and a participant, but with the perspective of one who knows the value of the silence. As the late autumn rains begin to lash against the shutters of the workshop, a sound that is as rhythmic and hypnotic as the scraping of a chisel, I feel a sense of profound, quiet contentment. I have built a life of substance, a life anchored in the patient, repetitive, and deeply rewarding labor of the hands. I have found my rhythm, I have found my purpose, and I have found the strength to continue the work, regardless of the challenges that may arise. The winter is coming. The world will turn cold and dark, but I have the wood, I have the steel, and I have the steady, beating heart of an artist who knows that the true lasting beauty is found in the depths of the work, in the quiet, persistent, and eternal act of creation. My legacy is not written in stone or gold, but in the slow, meticulous, and loving transformation of the wood. As the final evening descends, I place my chisel aside, leaving the mark of my life carved into the timber. I step out into the damp, exhilarating night. The air is cold, but my spirit is ignited with a fire that no winter can extinguish. I have walked the long winding path from the shadows of an apprentice to the light of a creator. The city before me is no longer a maze of stone, it is a testament to the human soul's refusal to be forgotten. I walk toward the horizon, my hands calloused, my heart quieted, and my mind finally beautifully at peace. The masterpiece is not the panel I have carved, it is the life I have meticulously chiseled into existence, one steady strike at a time. I am the artisan, and the work is finally perfectly complete.
Sleepy History Tales is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes.
The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation.
Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study.
By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep.
Thank you for your understanding and support.